Well, I have about 11:10. There may be some others who join us, but since we have a sort of a hard stop on the other end, shall we begin? Okay. Well, I'm excited to see all of you. Good morning, and glad that you're a part of the larger Edification Day, as well as have come to this seminar. We want to welcome you and thank you for your interest and your commitment to growing in ways that give life and value to all of God's children. I'm Pastor Brenda Ritterpusch. I'm a retired pastor, and I come to this because I've served in 5 different parishes, and in each of those 5 parishes, I was the first woman to serve in that parish. And I have a great appreciation for all of those who moved the church forward so that women were ordained. And I have a strong sense of wanting to do what I can for those who currently serve and those who serve in the future. Anything I can do to make that experience better and to grow into more who God called us to be.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sue Feldman. I'm a church musician and a music teacher. And before I went back to school to become a musician, I was a cardiac nurse. I have experienced sexism and gender bias in the medical profession and also in the church. And I come to this ministry with the desire to help us all learn and grow and work together and hopefully make things better for now and in the future for others who come after us. Pastor Brenda and I would like to also share with you that she and I are newer to technology. So we say a huge thank you to Pastor Beth Martini, who is here with us, who will help us with any of us on the Zoom with the technology aspect of things. We have one request for all of you. If during the session you could please put yourselves on mute. You're welcome to leave your cameras on, but please put yourself on mute. And that way we will we'll prevent audio feedback. And the way you do that is you go down to the lower left-hand corner of your computer with your cursor, and you should see an old-fashioned microphone appear. And if you click on that, there'll be a line through it and you will be successfully muted until we get to the discussion portion. Please unmute yourselves when you would like to speak during the discussion. So we thank you for that. So I think we're ready to begin this part of the forum. And if we could share together in a word of prayer. Let us pray. Nurturing God, you make all of us in your image and graciously give each of us dignity and worth. Widen our eyes to see those who are too often overlooked. Open our ears to hear, really hear, those whose experiences differ from our own. Soften our hearts so that we humbly risk relating to all whom you love. Grant courage and determination to our spirits so that we come to live more inclusively. Expand our imaginations to seek and embrace your fairness and rightness, which bring healing and wholeness to us all. In so growing, help us to honor you, to marvel in your goodness, and to love as you so love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sue. We want to start today by sharing with you some of the perspectives that have helped shape this presentation and that really shape our discussion today. And the first of those perspectives might come to you as surprising, but we believe that sexism and gender bias get directed to all persons. We typically understand sexism and gender bias as being directed towards women, but we don't often enough talk about it as it is experienced by men and by LGBTQIA+ persons. So one of the things we hope to accomplish in our brief time together is to give you a sense of this larger context within which we all struggle.
We don't believe that blaming others for the way things are is helpful or productive. We all have inherited the system that we have, And to varying degrees, we have all bought into the inappropriate messages that it proclaims. These messages are not only result in unjust expectations and treatments that we receive, but unexamined, they lead us to even inadvertently perpetuate unjust expectations and treatments of others.
So to move beyond where the current state of gender roles is, we believe will take all of us working together.
We believe that creating dialogue about everyone's experience of gender is an important and often underutilized tool, and in healing the breaks and tears in our relationships with those whose gender differs from our own. We all need to have a chance to share, to be heard, and to be taken seriously. And we all need to respectfully listen, allow ourselves to be appropriately impacted by what we hear, and we need to seek to grow to be more the people God has called us to be.
Finally, sexism and gender bias not only hurt those to whom it is directed, but it also hurts and harms those who perpetuate it, even when we're not aware that we're engaging in it, and even though we are receiving power and privilege from it.
So with these perspectives in mind, here is an overview of our time together. We would like to talk about our use of the words implicit gender bias, sexism, and patriarchy.
We're going to show a brief video that illustrates at least an aspect of sexism and gender bias that's experienced by each of the groups, women, men, and LGBTQIA+ persons. Then following each of those videos, we're going to ask those who identify with the group whose story is being shared what you would briefly like the rest of us to know about that gender experience. And I wish we had more time to do that, but we have at least a brief time.
After that, we'll ask everyone else what questions you would like to ask about the gender experience being presented, or what you might personally struggle to understand or to do. We'll close with a brief overview of the related gender seminar that we have been developing and that will be available this coming fall.
The discussion portion of our forum will not be recorded today. And we do ask that everyone commit to treating our time of sharing both respectfully and confidentially. Is this agreeable to everyone? Good, okay. Any questions? Okay, then we're gonna dig in. We're gonna go through definitions quickly before we begin with the videos. Just to make sure that we're on the same page, we wanna share some definitions of the words implicit bias, sexism, and patriarchy. And the first, and you may be familiar with some of these, but just to make sure we're on the same page, implicit bias. These are the ingrained associations that we make without necessarily even giving it much thought. These associations can be neutral and they can even be helpful. So an example of this would be when I say that I'm going to make a sandwich and it's going to be peanut butter and all of us know it's going to be jelly. That's an example of making that kind of an association. They can be very helpful and it can be neutral. But the challenge comes when we've made associations that aren't accurate and that might not be fair. So for instance, some of you may know that my husband and I are retired pastors, and sometimes we work together in the same parish. And when that happened, we very quickly noticed that when someone wanted a very nurturing response, who do you think they went to? That'd be me. And when they wanted a response that they thought was very authoritative, who do you think they went to for that? Him. Now, people were completely unaware of this association that they were making based solely on gender expectations. The problem, of course, is that I also had authoritative answers and that he can be very nurturing. But folks didn't give themselves and they didn't give us the opportunity to experience the fullness because of what they assumed to be true. That kind of assumption is implicit bias. And when it's made due to gender expectations, then it's known as gender bias. So that's implicit or gender bias. Now we're going to move on to sexism. And when you read through the literature, you're going to find a lot of definitions for sexism. We're going to make it simple for today. And we're going to say that sexism includes expressions of gender bias, those implicit associations we make. But in addition, it encompasses the thoughts, words, and deeds that are known by the perpetrator to be inappropriate and prejudicial, but they're engaged in anyway. So they may be engaged in out of a sense of fear, insecurity, an unwillingness to change, or because of a desire for the power and privilege that comes in engaging in it. Sexism has a stronger and much more negative connotation than implicit bias, and that's because it includes blatant prejudice, knowing indifference, and intentional harm. So an example of this would be when a woman, man, or LGBTQIA+ person is called a disparaging name that's related to their gender. And we all know what some of those words are. Those are examples of sexism. So we have implicit gender bias, sexism, finally, patriarchy. This refers to the structures, both seen and unseen, and the overall system that privileges and enhances the power of men at the expense of all others. So we all have a sense of what these terms are about. Any questions? Okay, then we're going to get to the good part. We're going to start with a gender experience of women, and we're going to show you a brief clip. Can everybody see the clip? Okay, let it roll.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm gonna just give you some actions to do. I just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
Here.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aww. My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, I don't know what it really, if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. Sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down because during that time, they're already trying to figure themselves out. And when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person, it's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swim like a girl? Keep doing it because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball in time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. It doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that's not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm going to do it anyway. That's what they should do. If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently? I would run like myself. Would you like a chance to do that? Why can't run like a girl also mean win the race?
Okay, we're going to turn the recording off now.
There's a setting called audio recording.
How is it that we all know what running like a girl is, or we thought we knew what running like a girl was? Implicit bias. We all have.
You do that, then would have the screen share back.
Yep.
One. Okay,
Good.
all righty.
Can everybody see the screen? It looks like it. Let's roll. Thank you.
Boys and young men learn early on that being a so-called real man means you have to take on this tough guys. In other words, you have to show the world only certain parts of yourself that the dominant culture has defined as manly. You can find out what those qualities are if you just listen to young men themselves.
A real man is physical.
Strong, independent,
He's powerful. Physical.
intimidating, strong, independent,
In control. Rugged.
scares people,
Powerful.
respected,
Hard.
a stud.
Athletic.
He's muscular. A real man is tough.
Tough. Tough.
And just as most young men know what our culture expects of a so-called real man, they also know very well what you get called if you don't measure up. To be a real man, to be tough, strong, independent, respected, means fitting into this narrow box that defines manhood. The terms that are the opposite of that, wuss, wimp, fag, sissy, are insults that are used to keep boys boxed in. So if you're a boy, it's pretty clear there's a lot of pressure on you to conform, to put up the act, to be just one of the guys.
Okay, thank you. We'll ask that the recording be turned off now. Ask for the recording to be continued. And we're going to share an experience of gender that LGBTQIA+ persons have. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, roll it,
When I
please.
hit my college years, that was really stepping out into a new time in my life. My senior year of high school, I became so depressed that I made this decision that since I was never going to be able to be who I wanted to be, that I just didn't want to be alive anymore. And that was the year that I attempted to commit suicide. I had lost all my friends. I had been fired from my job. All the girls that I worked with had got together and wrote a letter to my boss and said that they didn't want to work with me anymore because I made them uncomfortable. They just didn't want to be around me, so I was fired. So I had this situation where when I was in school, no one wanted to talk to me or sit near me. And when I went home, I didn't have my job anymore. And I didn't have anywhere to go. And my mom would often ask me, like, why aren't you hanging out with your friends anymore? And I couldn't look at my mom and say, like, I'm not hanging out with these people because I don't want to hang out with them. Like, I'm not hanging out with them because they don't want to be my friend. But I couldn't say that to my mother. I knew that would just like break her heart.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn off the recording now, please. We had a lot more time for all these topics. What we want to share with you now is that sexism and gender bias, and we've sort of touched on this lightly through our forum today, but sexism and gender bias are within all of us. And even when it comes to our own personal gender. So we're going to give you an example of this fact, and we're going to show another clip, please. Can everybody see the clip? Okay, let it roll. Thank you.
Let me just start with number one. We got to get out of denial. We don't need, stop trying to be good people. We need real people. You know, I do a lot of diversity work and people will come up to me at the beginning of a workshop. They're like, oh, Miss Diversity Lady, we're so glad you're here. But we don't have a bias bone in our body. And I'm like, really? Because I do this work every day and I see all my biases. I mean, not too long ago, I was on a plane and I heard the voice of a woman pilot coming over the PA system. And I was just like so excited. I was so thrilled. I was like, yes, women, we are rocking it. We are now in the stratosphere, you know? It was all good. And then it started getting turbulent and bumpy. And I was like, I hope she can drive. I know, right, but it is not even like I knew that was a bias until I was coming back on the other leg. There's always a guy driving and it's often turbulent and bumpy, and I've never questioned the competence of the male driver. The pilot, it's good. Now here's the problem. It's like, if you ask me explicitly, I would say, female pilot, awesome. But it appears that when things get funky and a little troublesome, a little risky, I lean on a bias that I didn't even know that I had. You know, fast moving planes in the sky, I want a guy. That's my default. Men are my defaults. Who is your default? Who do you trust? Who are you afraid of? Who do you implicitly feel connected to? Who do you run away from?
Okay, thank you. So we all struggle with it, even when it comes to our own gender. We're all have been immersed in cultural understandings. I guess I'll put it that way. It's within us and it's around us. When we mess up, as we all do, it's important to apologize. It's important to recognize it, to apologize, learn from the experience, and strive to do better. Much harder is when we're the recipients, I think, of sexism and gender bias, because it's important, but it's not always easy to address the sexism and the gender bias that we've experienced. We got to try not to take it personally, but the problem is it usually comes to us very personally packaged, and we all have to continue to work at healing. Now, for me, in my own background and experience, I didn't have as hard of a time with those who were unintentional in their bias. I had a lot more difficulty with those who engaged in it knowingly and intentionally. However, you need to understand that not only in my experience, but in the studies that have been done, even unintentional gender bias tends to cut a deep wound over time, and it can have just as much impact upon people as does outright blatant intentional sexism. So we need to take all of this for everyone, women, men, LGBTQIA+ persons. We need to take all of these gender issues seriously, and we need to work on them. One of the things that we also need to share is, and I'm sure you probably already know this, but we need to say it out loud, that there is still plenty of even blatant and intentional sexism in the church and in the world around us. And part of our discipleship, I think, as well as part of our moral responsibility, is that when any of us is a bystander to a word, deed of gender bias or sexism, it's really important. It's essential that we try and find a way to call it out, to speak up about it, to educate others, to serve as an ally. Also, we have to work together to address the sexism and gender bias that's in our institutions, in the world around us, and that's in the church. Because all the studies indicate that there is, and the experience of people is that institutions have a really tough time dealing with it. They are often in denial. They don't want to deal with it. And if it's called to their attention to deal with it, they often deal with it inappropriately, usually trying to skirt the issue than dealing with it directly. So it's important that we all work together to make a difference in our church and in the world.
And now that we've had some time to think about and discuss gender bias and sexism, we'd like to ask Pastor Martini if she would please share a forum information sheet with you in the chat that you can save and reference for later. On this information sheet, we'll share credits for the videos that we presented today in the forum, and also our contact information and information about the new gender justice seminar resource that we're in the process of finishing, and it will be available to present beginning this coming fall. If you aren't able to save it from the chat, if you call the Synod office and ask to speak to Marty Shiflett, she would gladly give you our contact information, and we would happily send you the information to your email directly. The full seminar takes more time and offers more depth in regard to the larger scope of sexism and gender bias as it gets directed toward women, men, and LGBTQIA+ persons. It's important, as Pastor Brenda said, to be able to see it and identify it. It's basically what we did today, but just a lot more of it.
We'll also talk about the impacts that sexism and gender bias have upon each gender, women, men, and LGBTQIA+, as they experience it. But what's often not talked about, but is very important, is there is an impact upon those who perpetrate sexism and gender bias. And since each of us has bought into the system to some degree, that means there are costs that all of us bear. Finally, as regards this seminar that we've been developing, we've appreciated the justice resources that have helped us in our own personal journeys. But what we've often found frustrating, and maybe you have too, is often there's a lack of suggestions about what to do about the issue. So our seminar includes strategies that individuals, leaders, and congregations can use in order to begin or to continue to make a difference. And we also offer ideas and circumstances that we think that congregations and institutions, including the church, must struggle. And there aren't always easy, clear-cut answers or solutions, but nevertheless, we do need to be wrestling with some things that are all too often ignored or denied. So as we close today, are there any final questions or comments until we go to before we go to a final video? Anything that someone would like to share?
I just wanted to identify that I'll put the link in the chat too of the ELCA's newest social statement called Faith, Sexism, and Justice.
Great. Thank you.
Resources there as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pastor Ritterpusch and Susan, for leading this forum today. Really appreciate your facilitating and the great resources that you've provided.
Well, we appreciate the diversity of people who have participated. We appreciate your sharing and your vulnerability. We'd like to close with a up note. We did find a video. In fact, this past week, we found a video that sort of illustrates what we're talking about, but we found it really inspiring and uplifting, and we think that you will too. So our final video, please. Can everybody see it? Okay, please let it roll.
We are the 5-Star Boys.
Great name. Okay, give us your names and ages, please.
I'm Bo and I'm 12 years old.
Hello, Bo.
I'm Toby and I'm 11 years old.
Hello, Toby.
I'm Adam and I'm 10 years old.
Hello, Adam.
I'm Joey and I'm 10 years old.
Hello, Joey.
I'm Ollie and I'm 11 years old.
Okay, well, you've obviously been rehearsing for this. This is the big day. This is the big moment. When you woke up this morning, it was like, what were you thinking?
Nervous as
Yeah.
anything.
And excited?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
this real?
And why are you here?
We're trying to spread the word for boys who dance because it's not always easy for us. We get bullied.
We kind of just say to ourselves, we know we're better than them. Boys can dance if they want to. It's not going to affect anybody else. And they're just people that are jealous of you.
Only two things are forever: love and liberty mutual.
I'm not sure why that did that. Pastor Martini, can you help me out? Let it
You
play.
might just have to, unless you have a paid YouTube subscription, they do
Let it play
insert.
through.
Yeah.
Costs your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need. And if anyone objects to this marriage, Kevin, no, not today. Only pay for what you need. Liberty, 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 liberty.
Well, we're your friends. If you won, what would you do with the dough?
Buy a flight to go to Disneyland.
Yes! But also give it to people that need it more than us.
Aw, like me. Good luck.
Thank you.
I've lost the sound.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it'll come up in a moment.
Have you ever felt like nobody
Yes.
was there? Have you ever felt forgotten? Love nowhere. Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall, no one would hear. Even when the dark comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun keep streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. Lift your head and look around. You will be found. You will be found. You will be found.
God's even mind. The light,
Look what it means to him.
shine, just hold the night like the fourth of July.
We'd like to leave you all with this image. This is truly work that we all need to be doing together, regardless of our gender. We want to say thank you again for being with us today. And at this time, we will be leaving the forum Zoom and returning to the main Zoom link to conclude today's Edification Day with Bishop Dunlap's closing remarks and his prayer, which will start at about 12:15. Again, we thank you so much for being with us today, and we hope to see you all again. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Blessings.